It's an awesome thing to live in this day and to live in the kingdom. And we want to talk about that today because that's why we're here. And I believe that the Lord gave me an assignment for today, so we're going to go ahead and carry out that assignment. And Renee, if you'll put up the title, this is the assignment. Laying down another paver on the path to wonder and amazement. Now, what in the world do I mean by that? Well, the key word there is paver, and down here in Florida, we know all about pavers, don't we? They're everywhere. They are around pools. They are around patios. People pave their driveways with pavers. The paver is a piece of stone or concrete or some other impermeable material that gets placed in the ground so that people can travel over it. Okay, and pavers in a walkway are laid down in a particular order to enable you to go from one place to the other. So that is what we're talking about today in the Spirit, is that the Lord wants to put another paver in place as we move forward into this year of wonder and amazement. We just heard some testimonies today of wonder and amazement. And believe me, for me personally, as the dad who couldn't help his daughter, that was huge. And like Susie said, it was very difficult. I felt like I had failed. But God had bigger plans. And that's part of what today, that's part of what today is about, is discovering the larger thing that is behind all of this. And that's the paver that we're going to talk about today. But before we do, when you put down a paver, before you put down the pavers, you have to prepare the soil, don't you? You can't just come and I'll put a brick here, and I'll put a brick here, and a brick here, and it'll be all done. No. They excavate very often, at least a few inches, and then they smooth the soil out, they tamp it down so that the paver stays in place. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do today is prepare the soil. Okay, you ready? All right, this is the way it works. We start out with the reality that there are only two forces in this world: the kingdom of the beloved Son and the domain of darkness. That's it. There is no gray area. You're in one or the other. If you're not in the kingdom of the beloved Son, then you're in the domain of darkness. That's just the way it is. And we all begin in the domain of darkness, but by God's grace and His mercy, we can get transferred from the from the domain of darkness into the kingdom of the beloved Son through the salvation that comes through Jesus and being born again and being filled with the resurrection power of Jesus. We are moved from one to the other. But let's talk a little bit about these two realities. And the first is that each of these operates on different principles. The kingdom, and that's the paver that we're laying down today. We're laying down the kingdom paver because that's how we're going to move to wonder and amazement. You don't want the domain of darkness paver, right? No. In fact, that's not flat at all. That's filled with rocks and all kinds of things. But each operates on a different principle. The kingdom of the beloved Son operates on the principle of authority. The domain of darkness, control. Control is seized or taken, and we see that at the very beginning of Scripture in the book of Genesis in the garden, when Adam and Eve surrendered control to the serpent. When they were deceived, that was the devil's plan, to deceive them so that they would surrender control. Okay? But when you come into the kingdom of the beloved Son, you have a totally different operating system that you're under, and it's called the authority of the kingdom of God. Control is seized or taken, authority is given and earned. Okay? Control seeks domination through manipulation, and we see it all around us, don't we? Everywhere we look, we see the spirit of control in the world around us. Authority is relational. Kingdom authority now is relational. The domain of darkness is built on control. The devil and his minions, and there are minions all over, there are millions of minions, can only seek control because he has no real authority. Okay? Which is why it is so ludicrous to see all of these minions of the domain of darkness thinking that they can seize control. You've got the Uniparty here in the U.S., you've got the woke agenda, you've got the Islamists, you've got Russia, you've got China, you've got the, you name it. And here is the amazing thing. They're all seeking the same thing. They have no desire for a relationship. They want control. They don't even want authority. Authority they throw out. They want control. Now here's what's going to happen. All of these minions who have this thirst, this lust for control are going to clash because they all want the same thing. And eventually, they are going to come to heads. I mean, the most ridiculous of all of these, and I've been following it for years and just shaking my head, is the idea that the liberals in this country think that if they just make peace with the Islamists, with the jihadists, it's all going to work out. Forget it. The jihadists want to control the world. I mean, really. If you go to Jerusalem and you go to the Dome of the Rock, as I have, and you look at the dome itself, in most of the Middle East, you have a half crescent. You have a crescent, rather. The Dome of the Rock, it's two crescents together, because from the very beginning, Islam's goal has been world domination. And I just saw a headline this week. In fact, it was yesterday. I was just scrolling through the news on my phone, and I saw where somebody in Europe, I don't remember who, but some authority in Europe was trying to sound the alarm that Islam is going to take over Europe. And I have been to places in Europe. I've been to Turkey. I've been to Islamic nations, so I'm familiar with the reality of it. And one of the darkest places I've been I was once, and I've only been there once, but I was in this small village in Germany, and I was lost. I was out for a walk. Gemund. I was in Gemund, which is near the Belgian border. It's right on the edge of the territory of the Battle of the Bulge. For those of you that have any idea of what the Battle of the Bulge was, which is World War II. But it was very dark. And everywhere I went, the signs weren't in German. They were in another language. They were in Arabic. But the domain of darkness is built on this. And what we're watching in the domain of darkness is this spirit of manipulation to get control. All of these things that we see on the news, the masks and all of the rest of it, and boy, oh boy, are they coming up with a lot of viruses that you better get a shot for every time you turn around, because they want control. Okay? So this isn't a message about control. This is a message about kingdom authority. So let's move on. I could easily go down that path, but that's not the path that the Lord has for us today. The kingdom is built on authority. So let's ask ourselves a question. What does kingdom authority look like? Well, there's an incident or an event in the life of Jesus when he was on earth that is a tremendous revelation, if you will, of what kingdom authority looks like. Run, if you'd go to that, please. It's found in Matthew 8, beginning in verse 5. I've used the Amplified version here. It says, as Jesus went into Capernaum, a centurion, and we all know what a centurion was, a Roman soldier of rank, came up to him, begging him for help. And then this in the parentheses, this thing with Luke, that's the other place in the Gospels where this event is recorded. And saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed with intense and terrible tormenting pain. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied to him, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man subject to authority of a higher rank, with soldiers subject to me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it. And when Jesus heard this, now, this is the only time I've ever read this in the Gospels, Jesus was amazed. It's the only time that Jesus was amazed. I'm sure there were a lot of times he was frustrated. Oh God, what am I going to do with these disciples? But he was amazed. And he said to those who were following him, I tell you truthfully, I have not found what? Such great faith as this with anyone in Israel. Okay, let's take this apart a little bit. The key verse, you can keep it up, Rena, is for I, of the centurion's words, for I also am a man subject to authority of higher rank, with soldiers subject to me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it. That statement caused Jesus to be amazed, because nobody in Israel got it. The religious leaders didn't understand it. The disciples certainly didn't understand it. But right there is a description of kingdom authority. And let me explain to you what I mean. The centurion said, I too am a man under authority. I'm also subject to it. The New American Standard says I'm under authority. What was he saying? He was saying, I'm under the authority of a higher power, and that power gives me authority. And so therefore, and of course in his case it was Rome, And because he was under Roman authority and he had a position of authority, it gave him authority over those he commanded. And somehow he knew that Jesus was in a similar place. Think about that. He knew that Jesus wasn't acting independently. Now, he had watched Jesus, I'm sure. He had heard of what Jesus was doing throughout Israel. He had perhaps even been witness to some of these healings that took place because he actually came and asked for one, right? But he said to Jesus, no. I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. Just say the word. What was he saying? Just exercise the authority you are under. Now that's huge. He wasn't looking at Jesus as this magical healer that came out of the wilderness. He was seeing Jesus as a man under authority who had authority. Now, I'm sure that this centurion had no idea what authority Jesus was really under. I mean, he didn't know God, okay? But he could recognize that Jesus' authority came from someone of higher rank. Now, that's very important for us. The great faith that Jesus talks about here, the great faith was the centurion's confidence in the higher authority that Jesus was under. Does that make sense? You catching that? It was because Jesus was under authority that he could have authority. And so the centurion could have confidence then that if Jesus said the word, it would happen. So what is this word authority? Well, it's a fascinating word in Greek. And so we're going to go there next. Rena? In Greek, it's the word exousia. And just look at the different shades of meaning that there are. The first is privilege. Now, Jesus, that didn't apply to Jesus, okay? Father didn't say to Jesus, well, because I really like you, I'm going to give you the privilege of exercising my... No, they were already one. But in the kingdom of the beloved Son, that's where we begin. We have the privilege. God has given us the privilege of operating. Well, first of all, before we even talk about that, he's given us the privilege of actually just being there. That's huge. I have the privilege of knowing the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I have the privilege of being one with him. I have the privilege of walking under his authority, which then gives me the privilege to operate in his authority. Okay? When Jesus was doing those things around Jerusalem and around Israel, he wasn't operating in his own authority. He says he was operating in his Father's authority. And so in the kingdom, it's not about my authority. I don't have it. I operate in his authority. And that's a whole lot more powerful, isn't it? So the second is capability. This authority gives me the capability to do it. Paul says we're not adequate for these things, but God makes us adequate. Right there it is. Exousia. If you're operating in kingdom authority, you have capability. And you have competency. Competency is a huge word. It means you can do it. Not just you're capable, but you're able. Okay? Then freedom, you have the freedom to do it when he says to do it. Because I love this next. Delegated influence. He delegates us with influence from time to time. Actually, he delegates influence throughout the day as we go through our day with different things, doesn't he? We ask the Lord for assignments throughout the day. I start every day. I say, Lord, what are my assignments for today? He doesn't give me everything. It's not like I get a to-do list. It's not a honey-do list. But I get delegated influence to do the things that he calls me to do or shows me he's doing or invites me to go. Yes? Okay. Which then also gives me jurisdiction. Wow. That means in the spheres of influence that I am called into, I have jurisdiction. I have kingdom jurisdiction to do whatever Jesus says needs to be done. If it's my job, it's my family, it's my neighborhood, it's whatever. I have jurisdiction. I have kingdom jurisdiction. I mean, Jesus had all of these, right? Okay? Liberty and freedom are similar. Power, right, strength. Okay, that's normally what we think of when we think about exousia. When we think about authority, we think about those last three. But those last three are nothing without the ones that go before. Because it's not brute authority. That would be the kingdom of darkness or the domain of darkness. That's what they want. They want power. They don't care about right. They want power and strength. Now, exousia appears again in Matthew 10 when Jesus sends out the 12 on their first evangelistic healing crusade. We're not going to turn there, but it'd be interesting for you to read that. Now, we have to step back. And we have to put ourselves in the place of Jesus, the Son of Man. Okay? Not Jesus, the Son of God, but Jesus, the Son of Man. The centurion didn't understand that Jesus was both the Son of God and the Son of Man. All he knew is he was this guy that was going around healing people. And he somehow also knew that meant that he was under a higher authority. Because he could just say the word and it would happen. Okay? So he just see him as a guy. But we understand that he was both the Son of God and the Son of Man. Now, for us to understand our kingdom authority, we need to look at him from the perspective of Son of Man. Okay? So I have to ask you a question. After we've just done this whole thing on exousia and we've seen the centurion's amazement, Jesus' amazement at the centurion's words and so on, I need to ask you a question. When Jesus was on earth, did Jesus have absolute authority? How many believe he had absolute authority? How many believe he didn't? How many believe don't know? Oh. Here's the answer. He didn't. By his own words, he didn't. He said, I only do what I see the Father doing. I only say what I hear the Father saying. I only go where the Father tells me to go. Pastor David before was talking about restraint when we were in the time of testimonies. Jesus had limited authority because he had laid aside his absolute authority to come to earth. And so if we're going to relate to him in the kingdom now, we need to see the way that he lived his life because that's the way we're called to live. Yes? Okay. So Jesus did not have absolute authority. That's wonderful. You know why? Because he was setting the example for you and me. I don't know about you, but I don't have absolute authority. I mean, I don't even have authority over some things that I think I should have authority over. Like keeping my hair straight. I mean, that's ridiculous, but you get the idea. Jesus didn't have absolute authority. I don't have absolute authority. So what does kingdom authority then look like for us? Well, as we move into our year of wonder and amazement, we're going to see examples of his authority being released in ways that we've not seen before. I'm prophesying now. We are going to see his power released in ways that we've not seen before, and we are going to see things that are going to be filled with wonder and amazement, not just in this building, but out there. Brings me to tears. Get a little glimpse of what he has in mind. Oh, beloved, it's going to be amazing. But as we move, let's get back to our paver here, okay, that we're setting down. As we move into our year of wonder and amazement, we need to understand our authority also, both its power and its parameters. Okay? There were parameters to Jesus' authority on earth as the Son of Man. There are parameters for you and I. Now, let's start with this. Like Jesus, our authority comes from being subject to authority of higher rank, doesn't it? Okay? And who's that? Who? Jesus. I'm surprised. That's the automatic answer in church. You at least do that for Pastor David. You didn't do it for me. It's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's the higher authority that we're under. We're under the authority of the Godhead. The Godhead of the universe. Nobody else can say that. All of those people that are running around trying to have dominion can't say that. We have that authority that we're under. And we have delegated influence because of that over the domain of darkness. Listen to that now. Because we are under that divine authority, we have been given delegated influence. And the key word there is delegated. And we're going to get into that some more. Delegated influence over the domain of darkness. What does that mean? Delegated influence over sickness, disease, demons, the plans of the enemy. Whoops. We have delegated influence because we're under authority. So how does that authority work in my life? There must be some secret to it. Yeah, it's the same secret that Jesus, the Son of Man, employed. Listening. Asking. Waiting. And discerning. It's learning to hear his voice clearly and with discernment. I had a wonderful conversation last Sunday afternoon about all that's going on here. And the question was asked, and I don't have any exact words, but how this individual said, I understand this life of Christ in me. I understand it, and I'm learning to walk in it more and more, but how do we help people to walk in kingdom life on a daily basis? That's a wonderful question, because that's what we're all about. Now, because we are an unconventional church, we do things differently. Because the kingdom operates, this is a surprise for some, but the kingdom operates differently than most churches. Jesus didn't hold classes. He did demonstrations, and he called his disciples to step out. Paul didn't hold classes, wasn't around that much in a lot of places, but he taught people how to do these things that I've just described. Because it all boils down to seeing and hearing Jesus. So how do we help people to walk in kingdom life on a daily basis is a wonderful question. And there are a few, there are a couple of levels here that I want to just quickly highlight. And this is where I got so excited today. Sorry, I do that. Because I was watching it take place in the testimonies. People recognizing that Jesus had done something and were giving testimony to it. And I don't know about you, but that encourages me. Ruth's testimony really encouraged me. Now, I got to take part in one of the testimonies, but then, I don't know, Zane's testimony. Although I know that it was huge for the kids. And that part really is encouraging to me, that it was the kids' prayers that brought Zane through. Sorry, you should have got the 1,000 back, because it wasn't the vet that did it. It was those kids' prayers. So here we go, with some thoughts on how we help people to walk in kingdom life on a daily basis, and we just observed some of it this morning, and I'm going to get into it here. The first is COM's role, Church of Motion's role in this whole process. It isn't classes per se. It goes like this. It's providing understanding and revelation of the kingdom. That's our first responsibility, is to teach kingdom life and lead people to the place of revelation. Because once you've got the revelation, you've got all the tools you need. In fact, if you're born again, you've got all the tools you need for kingdom life. At the basic level, at least, because you got ears to hear, eyes to see, and you can ask. So to provide understanding and revelation, but then the other, and this was what took place today, and this was that moment, was to provide opportunity to practice, to share testimonies of what he's done when we gather corporately and in home gatherings. I cannot underscore this enough. The key or the path to the year of wonder and amazement lies with each one of us. And so we need to allow the Lord to stir us up some more. Some of us need to, pardon my French, get off our duffs and exercise what he's given us. We'll get to that in just a moment. But what's really amazing is we had a staff meeting this week, and we had a discussion about all of this, and Pastor David and Pastor Brooks' vision for seeing more of that happen, and you saw him initiate that today. But I have a tremendous testimony for you from our home gathering this week. Because I believe God was doing something prophetically in our home gathering this week. We had 7 people, so it isn't about numbers. And 2 of the people were from another denominational background, and so they weren't walking in what we were walking, but boy, did they get it this Wednesday. And here's what happened. I sensed from the Lord before Susie started worship, I sensed from the Lord to give everybody an assignment. And we need to take this seriously because it's going to start with our accepting assignments before it starts to become a way of life. Are you with me? Sometimes in order to get to lifestyle, you got to exercise. It's like what Gail is doing for me right now in my recovery from my heart surgery. She's giving me exercises that I have to do. Why? To get me to the place where I can automatically do what I used to do without feeling, ugh. Okay? This is bigger because it's moving from exercise, it's moving from being deliberate to where it becomes lifestyle, it becomes automatic, and before you know it, you're listening and you're hearing and you don't even think about it. And some of us are experiencing that already. I'm not negating any of that, but there's more. Okay? So back to our testimony. I gave everybody the assignment before worship. I said, look, I feel from the Lord this is what we're going to do. We're going to have worship right now, and here's your assignment. I'm going to ask you during worship to not just sing. I want you to sing if you want to sing. But I want you to listen. And I want you to ask Father during worship if he has anything for you, if he has a vision, if he has a scripture, if he has something for you to share with the group afterwards. And oh, by the way, when we're done with worship, and this was the tough part, we're going to go around the room. I watched a few faces go, but that's okay. So we had worship. And then I said, okay, let's start sharing. And it was amazing. Everybody got something from the Lord. Somebody got a vision. Somebody got a vision. Actually, one of the most precious things is this dear lady who comes from another denominational background got a vision. And it's a very evangelical background, and so therefore it's not something that's normal. She saw the book of Revelation. She saw the myriads and myriads of saints before the throne. And she was bowing down with all the rest of them, and then she looked and she saw 2 feet. And she looked up, and it was Jesus. And that ministered to her so much because Jesus was saying to her, sweetheart, all of my children matter to me. And in fact, the Lord gave her a word before the night was over that she was precious in his sight. Okay? So we had that. We had, Connie was part of the group, and a particular song just really ministered to her because it brought her back to an incident in her development with the Lord. Steve had a vision, and different ones had a vision, and the Lord gave me a vision. And you know what my vision was? We were back in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 2:42. And I got to tell you, Steve Wagner looks pretty strange in one of those long brown robes and sandals. But what God was saying was, this is the way I built it. It wasn't just teaching, it was sharing with one another. And I'm going to say that I was edified by everything that took place on Wednesday. We were encouraging one another. People were being blessed in all different kinds of ways. We need to see that more. We need to have more Sundays like this morning, only we need to go beyond testimonies. We need to have people start to listen during worship and hear and ask, Lord, do you have something for me to release? Because we would love that. One more question. We're getting towards the end here. How many would agree that we can't hear Jesus as clearly as, we can't hear Jesus as clearly as he could hear his Father when he was on earth? How many would agree with that? Yes, it's true. Because we got all kinds of stuff coming at us. And he already knew how to hear his Father. I mean, please, they've been together forever. So this is why practice is so important. Why we're emphasizing all of this, both in terms of what took place today and this whole thing about how we grow in authority and how we grow in kingdom life. Practice is so important, and it begins personally. Every day. In two forms. It begins, first of all, by waking up and saying, "Good morning, Jesus," and starting a conversation. And asking him throughout the day. And you've heard me say that before, and all of us say that before. It also, the second part of it personally is being in the Word. Because you need the Logos, the written word, and the Rhema, the now word. And very often, the Rhema comes out of the Logos. Not always. And maybe it starts there and goes other places. But also, you need the Logos so that you can, that's the written word, so that you can judge the Rhema. Because it's amazing what some people think they hear from God. Could I tell you stories? So it begins personally, and then small groups like we were just talking about, and corporately like we saw today. Okay, we're going to wrap up now. Growing and hearing clearly with discernment requires four. First of all, it requires practice. The more we do it, the better we become at it, because it is a tool. Okay? His voice is available. You can ask any time. Believers would get so much more if we ask questions. But we don't. We wait for him. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes he's waiting for you. So it requires practice. It also requires guidance and encouragement. That answers the question that came last week in my conversation of how do we help people walk in kingdom life on a daily basis. It requires guidance and encouragement. That's why we're here. It requires a willingness to step out and make mistakes. Ouch. See, Susie and I are in the back on Sunday mornings so that Pastors David and Brooke have appointed us as sort of the filter based on our experience for you to come and say, I think I'm hearing this. It's like we got done with the testimonies this morning and Ruth came to Susie and said, I have this. Boy, did she ever. We want more of that. It also requires a willingness to have others help and confirm what you think you're hearing. And again, that's where we are corporately. In home gatherings, I think it's part of the role of the leaders. I think it's time for us to encourage. If we're going to talk about house to house in the Acts 2 sense of the word, we've got to be doing some more stirring up of one another's gifts. Amen? Because you have untold treasure to release. You know, I've heard in the past pastors say, there's gold in them thar pews. Now, sometimes they meant gold. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about treasures from heaven to be released that you carry. There are things that you carry that we need to help us grow. Do you believe that? We sure experienced that on Wednesday night. I also believe, and I want to encourage you to pray about this, depending upon where you sense you are in your own development in kingdom life. I believe Father is also raising up one-on-one discipleship relationships. People that have walked for a while and have a certain level of comfortability, if you will, with the things of the kingdom are needed to help others move along as well. Yes? It's really simple. So, we've laid down the paver. It's time, beloved, to step on this paver. It's time to step on the authority that we have been delegated. It's time to move, and we will be amazed that we see what happens.